What time tomorrow can we expect that?
Well, I have a question. It might be, to be clear, we also, there will be less costs for the crossings because we will be closing Roosevelt. Correct.
Yes.
So that will be added back in,
Yes, absolutely. If
balanced out, I guess, because some of the,
until we know with certainty what the repurposing of Roosevelt is, we will certainly take the net effect of opening up the crossings.
Your only revenue bullets were on enrollment growth and allowable growth increases. The others are all expenditures.
The stuff you're going to do is the stuff I thought we were going to have tonight. How long is it going to take to get it?
We'll have it at the next board meeting.
Okay.
I asked what time tomorrow.
okay. Any other questions for Paul about this specific?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Lane, do you have anything else information to give us at this point? Nothing? Okay. I think the next step would be to get a little bit of a reaction, board reaction to how the financial projections are going to impact our process, our response to the boundary and the high school enrollment options that we have here. So obviously we still have a high school enrollment issue, even though we have a significant financial projection, negative projection. So I don't know if anybody has any comments to begin to respond to this, other than the fact that we don't obviously have money
Well, I mean,
to do some of this.
without a whole lot of time to reflect on that, but I guess most of that is not, really surprising. I guess my reaction is that, as we think about a third high school, if that continues to be the direction the community is leading us, I think we have to think about the transition period potentially as, longer, obviously, than 2014. And what that means for us for planning is I think we have to have in mind some much more aggressive solutions to transition. Because if what we're saying when we say we want to build a third high school, if the corollary to that is we don't want to add on to City High School, we don't want to add on to West, well, we have to have a much more aggressive transition plan for a lot more kids. To your question, Gail, to Jim, we need to see those numbers, out 5 more years probably, understanding that projections become less reliable the further out we go. But, we're talking, I would assume, about pretty aggressive use of temporaries at multiple locations.
We're certainly talking about using all the current capacity that we have, all the available capacity everywhere.
Which I think means shifting kids. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, no, you asked for initial reactions. That was my...
I guess I'd throw in another initial reaction. Between last board meeting and this board meeting, it has concerned me a great deal. I think, I don't know, maybe it's the way that we have this on paper, or maybe it's that we have, I think we've been careful about saying that date of 2014 is when we might first have the enrollment needed, but it certainly isn't necessarily when we're going to have the money to be able to construct this school. And I've been hearing comments from lots of people that give me the impression that people didn't hear that. They heard that we're going to have a third high school in 2014, and that certainly isn't what well, I'll address this to Lane. I mean, these were your documents, your date. I don't think that's what you meant. It certainly isn't what the board heard you as telling us.
Certainly, when you get to 2014, 2015, that's really when we've used up most of our additional capacity. So we will have to be looking at some other means, whether that be, portables or split sessions or something until you can transition into that. But that's about when we're filled up without having to add on classroom space to any of our schools.
And you're saying that even considering if we move enough kids to City to utilize fully the capacity that's at City as well?
I think if you moved, in Tim's comments that you need to be a little more aggressive. If you moved more students, I'm not sure how much more time we could buy, how many years. one of the reasons we didn't go much further with the projections is that the University of Iowa typically goes only 5 years. They did 6 years for us, and we can certainly ask them, but again, I'd caution everyone that it becomes less, really less reliable the further you go out there, because if we have 1 year, if we come in this fall and gosh, we don't have our enrollment, those numbers will be, as you saw in this last demographic report, they were rolled down from the previous year predictions, the longer range predictions because of that. But also, that's a double-edged sword, because if you don't gain enrollment, you're not growing as much in your revenues as well.
Mhm.
But I would say, we have to make some projections a little further out, but with that caution that, they certainly could change.
Mhm.
One question I have is, with the discussion of ninth grade and leaving the ninth graders, a portion of ninth grade students at Northwest, I think I would like to see a little bit more information about what that programming would look like. I mean, I understand the concept, but we don't really have any experience with that as a district, at least I don't. And I mean, we had the West High opening with the 7 through 12, but I feel like that's something we need to look at and have a better sense of what that will look like, and also financially what that will be, because that's going to be an expense.
I think we also need we need to ask the community, the people that would be affected by this in the community, to make sure that they understand that this may not be just going on from now until 2014, but may extend beyond that date until we can afford this high school. Is that still a preferable option to some of the other options, like adding on to West or adding on to City? It maybe is not quite as short-term a solution, having ninth graders at Northwest, as some people may be thinking it is. So is it still a good idea from the community standpoint if it continues on longer than they may be currently thinking it would?
Well, one of the comments that I've had received, and I think we all have, is the idea of why changing boundaries if in 2014 we are going to be moving again, and if it's just for a couple of years, would it be better to just stick with the ninth grade option rather than to change those students? And I think that argument takes on a totally different look when if we're really projecting that it's going to be longer than that period of time. I think it's hard to look at that as the only option if we're actually extending the period of time that we're going to anticipate before we can open a new high school. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
You also can gain some capacity as the scenarios that you have. Again, I think Jim in his PowerPoint said that we were moving 150 ninth grade students. You could kick that up to 175 in a combination of those scenarios, or you could include more. What we were trying to do in putting these scenarios and the building blocks together also was to be sensitive to that issue of having to change boundaries multiple times. If you could change them one time, certainly you wouldn't move as many children, but if we could open the school sooner, you could get by with moving fewer and leaving those fewer students permanently.
That makes me think of another point I wanted to make about the projections. We asked, I asked to have the adjustment for siblings entered into this.
Right.
And I'm glad you did that. I thank you, but I should have thought about that a little bit more carefully and specified both in and out of the projections, because in some cases we may be thinking about, hopefully we're thinking about some of the boundary changes as not being necessarily ones that will reverse in the future. So we need to know that we're not sending too many kids to City. So if we have subtracted out those that would be grandfathered out of this option, we may be thinking that we're sending 50 kids to City and we're really sending 100 kids to City. So I think we need to know.
What you're asking for is what it is without the grandfathering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Both with and without. So.
It was more difficult to
questions
figure
do I
out
have?
the grandfathering, so we probably already have those numbers, don't we?